Leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call the Cabinet. Ask your question now. Call 0345 6060 973. This is LBC.
It is indeed LBC, and it's 5 minutes after 9 on Monday, July the 18th. It's Call the Cabinet here, exclusively on LBC. Welcoming to the studio, Conservative MP for Berwick-upon-Tweed and Secretary of State for International Trade, Anne-Marie Trevelyan. Thanks for coming along. Good to have you on, Secretary of State. You'll be taking your first call in just a moment. But can I ask you, take you back to what seems like, I don't know, ages ago now, decades ago, but in fact it was just a couple of weeks. You were one of the few ministers who neither publicly called on Boris Johnson to go, nor resigned. Why?
That's right, Nick. I wasn't, because I have been a Boris supporter. I helped run his campaign when he ran, it seems like a long time ago now, what we're doing again, to be leader and Prime Minister. And I have always believed him to be an excellent leader. He has had some errors of judgment, which he has indeed, as we all know, taken not only a number of apologies for, and he's been very clear on that. He realises he has made some errors of judgment, but indeed the party has decided that he is no longer there. But I was determined both to continue doing my role as International Trade Secretary. It's terribly important that we maintain those relationships and assure those across the globe that we are continuing to lead the way in these areas, but also to support the boss. I spoke with him, as a number of us did, the evening before he decided to step down, and I shared with him my views, which I will not share publicly, but I did never feel...
Can I characterise them as the time is up?
I said to him I will stand by him for whatever he needs to do, but I was wanting him to make sure he could hear every voice around him, and I think he showed the wisdom that he invariably has when under pressure, which is to take in all the information and then to reach a conclusion. And I think he reached the right one, though I think it's a sad loss and we will miss him terribly. His political leadership has been incredibly strong.
Calls are coming in actually concerning the Prime Minister, but let's try and look to the future. Thank you for that. And the first caller is Anthony in Staines, and you're through to the International Trade Secretary Anne-Marie Trevelyan. Go ahead, Anthony, your questions.
Yes, good morning, ma'am.
Hello.
What I'd like to ask you is, I notice you're not supporting your underling at IT PM for PM. You're supporting, I believe, Tom Tugendhat. I wondered why. And if a Tugendhat drops out, who would you support for Tory leader?
And just to explain, PM for PM is, of course, Penny Mordaunt, and Anthony's very valid point is that Penny Mordaunt is effectively on Anne-Marie's team, but doesn't get your support. To Anthony's point, why?
So that's right, Anthony. I'm supporting Tom. Tom is a very dear friend of mine and someone I have enormous respect for, his political judgment and indeed his vision of what the Conservative Party should be driving towards in the years ahead. So I wanted to take this opportunity. As I say, I stood by Boris Johnson until the end because I felt that was the right thing to do. Looking forwards, I want to make sure that our party has the opportunity to hear from that next generation. I think Kemi Badenoch has been similarly bringing that energy and that new perspective of the next generation, and I think it's been really important to hear that, and we shall see how everyone goes in the ballot today.
But to Anthony's point, why not one of your team? PM, Penny Mordaunt.
So as I say, we've all chosen in that first round.
You said why you liked two others. You haven't said why you didn't want to support PM, Penny Mordaunt.
So her vision is not the one that I would most want to see delivered. She's a Conservative, and we all sit very, comfortably within the Conservative family. But I wanted to make sure that Tom's vision, and indeed Tom himself, an extraordinary leader, someone who can bring people together. I've seen it in so many circumstances myself, and anyone who's worked with him in his previous various lives says the same. He has this extraordinary ability to bring people together to work with him who would not otherwise work together, and I think it's a genuine gift, and I wanted the rest of the world to see much more of it. If this isn't his time, I hope that there will be a future time when he can lead the party.
Are you perhaps concurring with someone who said that Penny Mordaunt perhaps isn't that strong on detail? Do you agree with that?
So I have had a super and now changing team at the Department of International Trade, one of whom is Penny. We all do our jobs in different ways, understandably. Perhaps now it's clear Penny has for the last few months spent some of her time focused on preparing her leadership campaign, for which I have, utmost respect. That's how this system works. I'm brave for anyone who would be willing to put themselves into that role. But as I say, I wanted to support Tom and share what I think is his great vision.
So she's been absent without leave. If it's last few months, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, well, the big dog's only been gone a couple of weeks, so she's been spending all this time preparing her campaign, hasn't she?
So I think a number of the candidates have spent quite a long time preparing their campaigns, yes.
So she hasn't been able to provide the sort of work that you'd have required in the department.
So there have been a number of times when she hasn't been available, which would have been useful, and other ministers have picked up the pieces, yes.
You're not best pleased about that, I sense, Anne-Marie.
So as I say, ministers do what they need to do, and when there's an election in the offing, those who want to put themselves forward will do that.
To the second part of Anthony's question, and you're now going to tell me, of course, that Tom Tugendhat will storm through, and I think it's fair to say, and this is just the people who've written up the TV debates, he's had a very good couple of debates, but were he not to make the final two, to whom might you lend your support?
So I think, as you say, he has shone, and as people have met him and heard from him, they've seen what I've known for a long time, which is that he is a really important member of the Conservative Party and a future leader for certain. Should he not get through, I will look at the screen again. My instincts are probably that we will send Rishi and Liz to the members to have a proper scrutinise and decide. I think both of them would make great leaders, and I genuinely, honestly, I don't know who I would pick at the moment, so I wouldn't say. But if those two are the ones that go to our members, I would be content that the members have sound choices.
Anthony, thanks for getting us started. Keith is in Stoke Newington. Keith, you're through to Anne-Marie Trevelyan. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everybody. My question is, Boris Johnson was the only person who had the vision, the charisma, the character and the personality to resolve the current situations we're in internationally, which everybody knows, and was able to see the future and get us there, which is what he's been trying to do, where all these other contestants are just administrators. They don't have the qualities that Boris has got. So why are you getting rid of him for tickle-tackle issues?
Well, Keith, I didn't want to get rid of him. I wasn't someone who called for his resignation. I think there were changes that were needed in Number 10, and he was really driving those through, and I was supporting him in doing it. But I think you're absolutely right. Boris's talent and leadership, both domestically and on the international scale, have been impressive, and I think history will remember them well. I hope very much that we will maintain his vision and his passion for both his country and how the world can be a better place once he is no longer leader of the Conservative Party. But I think we will miss him very much, and I think there are colleagues who may have been short-sighted. But you know what? That's how this works, and the toughness of politics, which is decisions day by day and moving forwards, are ones that we all live in, and we need to harness what we have. That's why I'm backing Tom, precisely as you described, Keith. He is someone who has an incredible vision for our country, but also an incredible passion and knowledge and ability to bring people together on the international stage, which he's been demonstrating for the last 4 years as chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. He has changed policy. He has helped Boris to make some of the decisions he has on the international sphere through his deep relationships and his incredible vision.
Keith, noting what you say about the departing Prime Minister, is there any of the five who give you any sense of the level of excitement or enthusiasm that you might have picked up from the former Prime Minister?
No, I can't see any one of them, quite frankly. I don't know them well enough. I don't like Rishi Sunak because he started his campaign even before he told anybody else. And I think Sadiq Khan, who was the first one, was...
So no, you've got the wrong party.
It's all about internal battling politicians trying to get position, and it's nothing to do with the people.
Keith, thank you for your question. We must move on. I'm grateful for your input, sir. And the next question comes from Tanya in East Horsley. Tanya, you're through to Anne-Marie Trevelyan. Go ahead. Good morning, Tanya.
Good morning, both of you.
Hello.
I know something that's quite close to your heart. Has anything been done about the sexual harassment within the Palace of Westminster? And are you satisfied with what's being done? And although I, like you, would rather see Tom Tugendhat take over, would a female Prime Minister make any difference?
I remember we spoke a couple of months ago. You talked about, right at the height of this, you talked about unfortunate experiences that you'd endured. Has it been moved forward at all, Secretary of State?
Tanya, it's a really important question, and I think there is continuing progress. These are obviously issues that are managed by the House authorities, if you like, rather than government, and there has led by the Speaker of the House, and he continues to push forwards to make sure that the systems are robust enough that mostly young people, of course, feel able to come forwards if they are being threatened or abused in any way. And I think it is getting better. I think there's room for further improvement. Some of the challenges around where that happens, but you don't feel you can then go to the police, for instance, but the House authorities don't have, police powers, clearly. I think there's a mismatch there that we haven't quite got to grips with yet, but we will continue to work on it. And I think you're right. People like me who, are of an age where this was sadly much more ordinary, that kind of, casual abusive behaviour towards young women and indeed young men, we are there to advocate, and we will continue to push forwards and bluntly keep an eye out for those young people who are being preyed upon by those who think it's okay to abuse their power.
Hopefully it's unrecognisable, though, from those days, isn't it? Where your colleagues work today?
I think
it's moved on. Please say it's moved on considerably.
It has moved on considerably, interestingly, because the next generation are much less unbalanced in the relationships. There's a much better relationship between.
They're ready to call something out. Do you think?
Yes, they are, and many of my intake, the 2015 intake. I'm sort of on the older end of that cohort. So those who are in their late 30s and early 40s, they're just horrified by this sort of behaviour. And actually that generational shift is really good, and that is feeding through. But the reality is that there is this weird, power thing that takes over some people when they get elected, and it needs to be managed. They need help, bluntly, to make sure they understand that they are no more attractive when they got elected than they were before, and that they need to get on and treat people in any other work environment, which is with respect and with care, and indeed help them for their careers to grow through the appropriate methods.
And just to Tanya's final point, Secretary of State, might it change were there to be another female PM? Would that bring some kind of seismic shift in the dynamic, do you imagine?
So I think, as I say, because it's run by the House authorities and the Speaker and indeed the Leader of the House, it was under Andrea Leadsom's leadership as Leader of the House that there were big steps forwards with the Speaker, that we are seeing a much better place now. I think honestly, all men and women get this undecided, and of course most right-thinking people are just appalled when this goes on. What we need to make sure is those who are caught up in it for any reason, late night in a bar, on the terrace, all those things, that there is an absolutely robust system in place which will not allow it. And really importantly, that the whips offices are much more assiduous in managing those they know have problems, be they alcohol problems or indeed sexually predatory behaviour.
Tanya, thank you. Richard in Chelmsford. Richard, you're through. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Hello.
Hi, I run a business that I started in 2018 importing beer from Germany. The business was increasing and doing well, and even through COVID, we didn't have any issues until we left the European Union. It took me 9 months to get any deliveries back from Germany because the transport companies would not pick up groupage freight. We got increased paperwork, there's lack of support, increased costs. And what I'd like to know is, what are you going to do to improve the ease of importing goods from Europe? Is there a plan to correct the lies that the country were told by Johnson regarding Brexit? And if you're going to say we're going to improve things by trading with the rest of the world, I can get in my van and drive to Germany to collect things from the brewery, but I can't drive to Australia, America or New Zealand.
Where do you want to start?
Oh, thanks, Richard. And congratulations on your successful and growing business. That's really good to hear. I think one of the issues, and you're not wrong, as we transitioned out, as the TCA came into practice, there were a number of issues at the borders that were bothersome to many businesses importing and exporting. You're completely right. And I hope, and not helped by the stresses of COVID and indeed the disruptions to supply chains more widely. We set up in October last year the Export Support Service, which sort of does what it says on the tin, but it works both ways. In that sense, it's for businesses to talk to our teams who can then try and help unravel the technical issues that are getting in the way. And a lot of issues have been improved on, like any free trade agreement, of which the TCA is a kind of giant one that we've got with the EU. These are moving feasts, so you continue to look at issues where there are new problems kick off. So with, say, the Australia deal, which you mentioned, which will start, and that's great. But if we find that there's a particular issue that businesses from the UK or Australia are stuck with, there's something called a regular dialogue meeting where those issues are brought to the favour. So these things continue all the time. And with the EU, that's the same. It's actually managed in a overarching sense by the Foreign Office rather than by our department. But the technical issues and the management of it is run by our Export Support Service, and we're literally, I say this, I don't mean it flippantly, we're here to help in a practical sense, and our teams can then try and work through whichever government department can support it.
I don't sense Richard's he points out he can drive to Germany if he's got supply problems with that beer. Obviously, he can't drive to Australia. That was the point he's making. And he's saying that there are still... let's just get him back. There are still issues then with getting your necessary supplies, Richard. Is that...
Yeah, I can get it now, but it takes a lot longer and it's more costly and more paperwork. Nobody, for some reason, will collect beer from... or pallets of beer from Belgium. I haven't got a clue why that is, and we can't find out. But, yeah, things are difficult still.
So, Richard, may I suggest, please do get in touch with our Export Support Service. I'd be happy for them to have a look at that with you because, as you say, a lot of these things have been, fixed, dealt with as we've worked through them. Transport logistics, as we know, are still both more expensive and, challenging, but getting better. But do talk to the team because I'd be happy to look into that for you.
Richard, if you stay on the line, one of my colleagues will take your details and then we'll pass them on to one of the Secretary of State's colleagues, and then we will call back to see what assistance or how that works its way through to pick up on that particular case. Thank you. Be well. Staying with trade, Ruth in Bristol. Ruth, you're through to Anne-Marie Trevelyan. Go ahead, Ruth, your question. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me on. The UK's first post-Brexit trade deal with Australia is about to go through Parliament, and the Secretary of State hasn't allowed any time for a debate in Parliament. She's also not accepted requests by the Parliament Trade Committee for an extension to the time to consider it, which to me is very surprising given that we have, a leadership contest ongoing, and also in particular given recent revelations that her department suppressed information about negative impact for the food and farming sector in the UK. We know that most people, so there's polling out today that says that 78% of people expect parliamentarians to properly consider trade deals. We know that they also think MPs ought to have a vote on the trade agreement, which the Secretary of State is currently not allowing. There's also a change of guard in the UK, but also in Australia. There's going to be a new government. They have no plans to ratify until the autumn.
I need to move you to your question, if you can. What is your actual question?
The question is, will she now give some time to MPs to consider this very important first post-Brexit trade deal, and will she agree to allow for some more time and a vote in Parliament? And if not, why not?
Anne-Marie Trevelyan.
Thanks very much. Hi, Ruth. So a number of things. Just to correct you, the Australian government, which is now back in session, have put forwards their progress to ratify as quickly as possible. They will probably ratify the Australia deal before we do. In fact, their system is slightly slicker than ours, and the new Labour government doesn't wish to revisit it. They're excited about the new deal and they want to get it into action as quickly as possible. And your issues around reporting, the International Trade Committee quite rightly are there to challenge the department and help us to make progress. But they have published their report looking at it. They've had all the information, some of it for 6 months, a lot of it for 3. And I was able to sit down with them and be grilled just last week on all of these issues, which was very good. So we continue to move forwards on that. And I have, as you will be aware, as you're obviously very well informed, Ruth, continue to ask the House authorities for a debate in government time. Sadly, that is not within my gift to give. It's part of the...
Well, you can't call for a vote on the Australia deal.
So the way our legislation is set up, we have something called CRAG. It's quite a technical area, and that provides the opportunity. That is now running, and there is the opportunity to have a debate. The challenge from the committee is that this should be in government time, so I have perfectly happily asked that to be the case. That is sadly not within my gift to determine. It's the House authorities who determine that. But what we have had is a very long time and needed much discussion around this, and I think it's a really exciting deal. It's got some fantastic liberalisation.
Why not let us have a vote? Why can't they vote on it? I don't understand if it's that exciting.
Well, so this is a an FTA is a new contract. I think Ruth's point is because it's the first one that we've done from scratch. The previous 68 that we did, which were what we call rollover deals, deals were very much, they were the same deal that the EU had with country X or Y, and we took out EU and put in UK, bluntly.
Right.
And so we've rolled those over. But this, our Australia deal and our New Zealand deal, which we've brokered, are the first ones which we've started from scratch. They didn't bear any relation to anything else, so they're much more liberalising. They're really exciting. They're huge opportunities in many areas for British businesses, both for Australia and New Zealand. And we're bringing through legislation which will, we've placed the legislation which will come through, and there will be a lot of debate time around those in the autumn as we bring those enabling legislation through.
Just one final question before we move on. How close are we to a deal with the United States, Secretary of State?
So at the moment, we are in discussions around a number of areas with the White House. The White House, it doesn't want to formally restart the FTA negotiations at the moment, so we wait for that to be open. We think after the midterm elections may well be the time when they choose to do that. In the meantime, what we've been doing has been some fantastic state-by-state work, looking at market access barriers like mutual qualifications, some of the issues around agriculture, procurement, and we've just...
We're not going to do it state by state, are we?
No. State by state. At a lot of state level, there are market access barriers which can be released that don't need federal oversight. So clearly, the federal FTA, the full FTA, if you like, has things like tariffs in it and investment frameworks, and looking at data and those sorts of issues. But at many other levels, those other market access barriers that you would want to unlock, it is at the state level that we can do that. So we're working on those whilst we wait for the White House to decide to come back onto the table.
So we imagine that will be in place, towards the end of this year, or certainly beginning of next year, once they have their midterms out of the way. Would that be correct?
So we hope to see that pick up again. Obviously, we did quite a lot of the FTA work under the previous administration, but when Biden came into office, he put it on hold because he wanted to have a domestic focus. Now we have to respect his choice.
Do you think he'll be amenable to doing a deal? What are the indications?
We are seeing huge pressure from across the House, from senators calling for this to get back on track. So we can do that. But in the meantime, my team and I are working very closely with my counterparts, looking at some of those key areas like the impact on SMEs, thinking about female entrepreneurship and investment flows, some of those big areas that we will want to have in an FTA when we get to that point.
Let's just do a couple of questions that are coming in on the emails, if I may, Secretary of State. This comes in from Pam in Worcester Park. Tom Tugendhat said on Friday night no when he was asked if Boris Johnson is honest. Do you agree with him, or were you happy working for a PM who's not honest? Anne-Marie Trevelyan. Is Boris Johnson honest?
Thanks, Pam. So the question was asked, and indeed none of the candidates said they thought he was honest. I think the Prime Minister himself has admitted and indeed apologised for his errors in not setting out the truth when it kicked off, and he has indeed paid the price for that inability to see to the right answer immediately. And I think we will...
Is he honest?
So I think in many ways he is honest, but in the cases of those situations...
He is honest, but Boris Johnson is honest.
Well, so I think in many ways, of course, he is honest. He is a normal person like you or I, Nick, and that's normal. But he has indeed demonstrated his inability to answer that question straightly, to perhaps to appreciate the question itself, and he has therefore paid the price for that politically.
What question has he been unable to answer? Sorry.
Well, so, when we can go back over it, please let's not at any length, the discussions around
about parties
and so on, where,
he was dishonest.
Well, things happened, in his building, many of which when he wasn't there. Okay. But he gave the wrong answer. Therefore, it was a dishonest answer. I think the question of understanding the life of a prime minister and so on is a difficult one, which no doubt history will chew over for many years to come.
That leads into the next email question. Rachel in Bexley: does Anne-Marie Trevelyan see the day that Boris Johnson will return?
I think it's unlikely.
Okay, and finally on the texts and tweets, this from Clive in Bristol. Suella Braverman says Penny Mordaunt is woke. Do you agree?
So we have any number of discussions about woke, don't we, Nick?
We do.
I think Penny has a very strong focus. It's important to her on those social justice issues and how we discuss these things and how politics should be involved in it. I think I personally sit more firmly with Grant Shapps, which is I want everyone to be able to have a life free of distress and discussion about how they are.
The question is she woke? Yes or no?
I don't know. I'm afraid that's not how I looked. I think she's someone who, as a politician, is concerned and wants to bring to the fore in her political career the importance of those issues around identity, those sorts of things. I think we all want to make sure that our world is free of prejudice and that people can live safe and happy lives.
We've got time for one more question. It's surprising it's taken this long to get to Northern Ireland, but I'm not surprised we're there. Anne in Strabane, your question to Anne-Marie Trevelyan. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Very quick background. I'm a vet. I work on the Republic of Ireland side of the border, and I live in the north.
Right.
And my husband is a dairy farmer in the north, supplying the creamery based in the south. So my question is, as a Minister for Trade, who I would have thought you would have an interest in the trading capacity of the whole of the UK, why are you pushing ahead with the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill? It will rip Northern Ireland out of the single market, and it will create economic havoc over here, and it doesn't have the support of the majority of the people in Northern Ireland. And I know you'll say, oh, there won't be a border and we'll just let things go across, but the companies that buy from producers in the north will dictate whether they are happy to buy that product anymore. So whether you say that we won't put up a infrastructure or a real border, the border will happen economically. And people like my husband, who have built their farm up over years and years and years, solar panels, sustainability, everything, could go out of business overnight.
Anne-Marie Trevelyan.
Thank you. I think the challenges of these discussions around the Northern Ireland Protocol are incredibly hard for all of you who are living and working both in Northern Ireland and across the island of Ireland. And the challenges that we've had in trying to find solutions for some of the market distortions that we've seen, and the protocol, when it was first drawn up, had built into it a whole series of safeguards, as every free trade agreement does, that if stuff isn't working, let's have a pause, let's have a look at it. Indeed, the EU, the other signatory to the Northern Ireland Protocol, used one of those safeguards, Article 16 safeguards, back last year around the question of medicine flows, precisely because they had an anxiety, and indeed the issue was resolved and the protocol came back into action. So I think the challenge that the UK government feels is that there are these very real problems, and discussions have ground to a halt with the EU on trying to find solutions for them. So Boris Johnson felt that the only fair words was to come, because the UK has this responsibility to ensure that the Northern Ireland is absolutely part of the whole of the United Kingdom.
But how is that to be achieved? If we listen to Anne as she outlines the situation with her veterinary work and her husband's dairy work, crossing to and from the borders respectively, how is that to be achieved?
Well, that's exactly the challenge. So, set within the bill are these red and green lanes, for instance, and what we hope, and I think certainly and interestingly, all candidates in the election at the moment are putting this forwards. We want to continue and have really good discussions with you and try and solve these, because they are solvable. They are about those key issues.
How is it?
Well, it's a matter of negotiation and solution. So some of the issues, we could get very technical here if you want, Nick. Some of the issues here have been about the EU not seeing data flows, so not believing what we were saying. HMRC have now found a way to be able to share that information with the EU, so those discussions can have a much deep basis of understanding. As ever with negotiations, understand both sides and come at it to try and find a solution. I think all parties do want to find a solution. The Prime Minister felt it was necessary to push on that because the UK has that urgent responsibility.
Get a quick response from Anne, and just a quick response from what you've heard from the International Trade Secretary. Sorry.
Well, I don't think relying on the UK trusting what they're saying is going to really hold water at the moment, because they've shown how unreliable they are. The Northern Ireland Protocol Bill is actually breaking international law, and I don't really understand how they think that the EU can negotiate in good faith with it.
Isn't that the reality? As I know, I must let you go, we're on time, that the Northern Ireland, it has actually broken international law, Secretary of State. That's the reality, isn't it?
So the protocol bill that we're bringing through is absolutely valid within domestic law. It's perfectly legitimate for us to do this. The challenge about how we find a way to work together with the EU to do this, so that those resolutions are found, is the challenge that we've got to face.
But the original did break international law.
We could have a long discussion about that as well, if you like. International law, a treaty is a piece of international law because it's with another country.
Right.
It's with the EU. But treaties do both change and sometimes sadly fail, which one doesn't usually want to achieve because they're there as a bond of trust and a bond of, in this case, economic and social and religious support. The really important thing, the absolute commitment from the UK government is that the commitments in the Northern Ireland, the Good Friday Agreement, which are about peace and stability on the island of Ireland, are what we want to achieve. And in seeing the disruptions that we have and the inability to find solutions to ease those in the last year, the Prime Minister has felt that it's important to try and find other tools to help us try and stabilise that. We hope very much, as I say, that the EU and the UK teams will be able to get around the table.
Shouldn't have signed it in the first place, should we?
Well, it was brought forward before there was a TCA, so it was done in case we couldn't negotiate a deal as we were leaving the EU. It was done in order to protect Northern Ireland and the island of Ireland and the Good Friday Agreement. That was its purpose. So I always say it's sort of slightly clunky in the nicest possible way. It's designed to have as much wraparound as possible. We didn't know how it would work or roll out because we hadn't started it. As with many trade deals and others, once you get them going and you want to try and find things to improve it, that's what you do. So we will continue to do that.
I've kept you way too long. My apologies if I've delayed your day. Thank you,
That's
Anne-Marie
all right.
Trevelyan, who's International Trade Secretary, appearing here on LBC when news is next.
There's a warning hospitals and other health services will be pushed to their limit over the next few days of record-breaking temperatures. More ambulance call handlers will be on duty to help with the expected increase in demand. An unprecedented red warning for extreme heat has been issued for a large part of England. A body has been found after a 13-year-old boy was seen going into the River Tyne.